The lawyer's hands were shaking when he slid the folder across his desk. I remember that. I remember thinking it was strange. Why would he be nervous? I was the one sitting there in steel-toed boots and a shirt that still smelled like machine oil, completely out of place in an office with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking a city I'd only ever seen from the factory parking lot. "Mr. Carter," he said, and his voice cracked, Your father was Richard Miller." I laughed, actually laughed, because it had to be a joke. Richard Miller? The man whose portrait hung in the lobby at Miller Industries, the place where I'd punched a clock every morning at 5 a.m. for the last 10 years. The founder, the legend, the CEO who built an empire while I kept his machines running, invisible in a sea of grease-stained coveralls and hard hats. My father left when I was 6 years old, walked out of our apartment in the middle of the night without a word, without a note, without even a photograph to prove he'd ever existed. And my mom, she worked herself half to death at a diner raising me alone, making sure I knew we didn't need him, didn't need his money, his name, or his excuses. So I grew up angry at him for abandoning us, angry at myself for wondering what I'd done wrong, angry at every Father's Day, every school event where I watched other kids with their dads and felt that hollow space in my chest where something should have been. I'd walked past Richard Miller's portrait every single day for a decade. Every single day. And I never knew I was staring at my own father's face. My name is David Carter. I'm 32 years old. I have a 7-year-old daughter named Emma who makes me macaroni art and calls me her hero. I have grease permanently embedded under my fingernails and a back that aches from lifting heavy machinery. 3 weeks ago, I was nobody, just another body keeping the machines running while men in suits upstairs made the real decisions. But that day in the lawyer's office, staring at the folder I was too scared to open, everything I thought I knew about my life shattered like glass. Because my father hadn't just abandoned me, he'd watched me for years. Watched me break my back in his factory, struggle to pay Emma's dental bills, skip meals so she could have new school shoes. He'd been right there, just floors above me, and he'd done nothing. The room tilted. My throat closed up. I wanted to scream, to flip that marble desk, to demand answers from a man who was already 6 feet underground. "There's more," the lawyer said quietly, and I realized he was terrified of what came next. Mr. Miller left specific instructions. You don't just inherit his estate, David. You inherit Miller Industries, all of it. The company, the board seat, the decisions, the secrets, everything. My hand found the edge of the desk, held on. "There's a video," he continued, "from your father, recorded 2 weeks before he died. He wanted you to watch it before you made any decisions. He said," the lawyer paused, and something flickered in his eyes. Pity, maybe, or fear. "He said you'd understand why he did what he did, and that you'd have to choose whether to forgive him or destroy everything he built." I should have walked out, should have told that lawyer to keep his blood money and his dead man's secrets, should have gone back to the factory floor where things made sense, where a hard day's work meant something, where I knew exactly who I was. But I didn't, because 16 years of anger doesn't just disappear, and because Emma deserved better than a father who was too proud to give her the future she deserved, and because, God help me, I needed to know. I needed to know why. The folder sat between us like a bomb. Inside it was everything. Ownership papers, bank accounts with numbers I couldn't even process, legal documents that would change my life forever, and a USB drive labeled in my father's handwriting, "For David, watch this alone. I'm sorry." What I found on that drive, what my father confessed, it didn't just explain his disappearance. It revealed a truth so twisted, so unbelievable, that it made me question everything I thought I knew about loyalty, family, and the price of redemption. Because my father didn't just leave me a company, he left me a choice and a secret that could destroy hundreds of lives, including my own. This is the story of what happened next. The story of the day I stopped being invisible and became the most powerful man in a room, while still feeling like that 6-year-old kid waiting for his father to come home. If you want to know what was on that video, what impossible choice my father left me, and whether I chose justice or mercy, stay with me. Hit like if you've ever felt abandoned by someone you loved. Drop a comment telling me, would you have opened that folder or walked away? And subscribe, because what happens in Chapter 2 will make you question everything you believe about forgiveness. I'm David Carter, and this is the story of the day I found out I'd been working for myself all along. I just didn't know it yet. I drove back to the factory in a daze, the USB drive burning a hole in my jacket pocket like a piece of hot coal. The lawyer had offered to let me watch the video in his conference room, but I couldn't sit in that marble palace and hear my dead father's voice explain why he'd let me believe I was worthless for 26 years. The factory parking lot was nearly empty. Third shift had just started, and the building hummed with that familiar mechanical heartbeat I'd known since I was 22. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Richard Miller's portrait hung just inside the lobby entrance. I'd walked past it 2,000 times, maybe more. Sometimes I'd glanced at it, usually when Mr. Henderson, the floor supervisor, was lecturing us about honoring the founder's legacy and maintaining Miller standards. The man in the portrait had hard eyes and a thin smile. Distinguished, they called him. Visionary. I'd never seen my father, not a single photograph. Mom had burned them all the night he left, fed them into the kitchen sink one by one, and watched them curl into ash. I was too young to remember his face. For years, I'd tried to imagine what he looked like. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror and wonder if I had his nose, his jawline, his hands. Turns out, I'd been staring at him all along. I walked into that lobby with my heart hammering against my ribs. The night security guard, Marcus, looked up from his phone and nodded. "Forgot something, Carter?" "Yeah," I said, "something important." I stood in front of the portrait, really looked at it for the first time. And there it was, the shape of my eyes, the set of my mouth, the way one eyebrow sat slightly higher than the other. Emma had that same eyebrow. I'd always thought she got it from me, some random genetic quirk. But it went further back, to him, to Richard Miller, founder and CEO, the man who'd built an empire and couldn't be bothered to send his son a birthday card. My phone buzzed, a text from my ex-wife, Janine. "Emma's asking about you. When are you picking her up?" Tomorrow. I was supposed to have Emma tomorrow. Take her to the park, buy her ice cream, pretend everything was normal. How was I supposed to do that now? How was I supposed to look my daughter in the eye and not see the pattern repeating? Fathers who disappear, who leave holes in their children that never quite fill in. "You okay, man?" Marcus called out. I wasn't. I was the furthest thing from okay. But I nodded anyway, shoved my hands in my pockets, and walked back out into the cold November night. The USB drive felt heavier now. I didn't watch it that night. Couldn't. I drove home to my apartment, a cramped one-bedroom in a complex where the heat barely worked and the neighbors fought loud enough to shake the walls, and I sat on my couch in the dark. The USB drive sat on my coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. Sleep didn't come. Around 3 in the morning, I gave up trying. Made instant coffee, the cheap kind that tastes like burnt rubber, and stared at that little piece of plastic and metal that contained my father's last words. What could he possibly say? Sorry I abandoned you? Sorry I let you grow up poor while I sat on a fortune? Sorry I watched you struggle and did nothing? My hands were shaking when I finally plugged it into my laptop. The video was time-stamped 2 weeks before his death. He died of a heart attack in his office. Sudden, the news article said. Tragic loss for the industry. I'd read about it in the break room, seen the company-wide email about memorial services I didn't attend, never imagining it had anything to do with me. The screen flickered, and there he was, my father, alive, sitting in what looked like a home office, expensive leather chair, bookshelves behind him. He looked older than his portrait, grayer, thinner, tired. His hands were folded on the desk in front of him, and he stared directly into the camera, directly at me. "David," he said, and hearing my name and his voice made my stomach drop. If you're watching this, then I'm dead, and you've learned the truth. I don't expect forgiveness, I don't deserve it, but I owe you an explanation. I wanted to throw the laptop across the room. When you were 6 years old, I made a choice. I left your mother, I left you, and I let you believe I didn't care. His voice cracked slightly. The truth is more complicated. Your mother and I, we were young, too young. I was 23, building this company from nothing, working 100-hour weeks. She was pregnant, scared, and I was, God help me, I was a coward. My jaw clenched. This was his explanation? He was young and busy? But that's not why I stayed away, David. That's not the real reason. He leaned forward, and I saw something in his eyes I didn't expect. Fear. 2 months after I left, I received a threat. Someone found out about you, about your mother, and they made it clear. If I ever contacted you, if I acknowledged you publicly, you'd both be in danger. I hit pause, sat back. My heart was racing. Danger? What the hell did that mean? I pressed play again, even though every instinct told me to stop. The threat came from Marcus Dalton. My father's face hardened. He was my original business partner. We started Miller Industries together, though the world only remembers my name. Marcus provided half the initial capital. We were 50-50 partners for the first 3 years. I'd never heard that name, never seen it in any company history. Then Marcus got greedy, started cutting corners, bribing inspectors, using substandard materials to inflate profits. I found out, confronted him, told him I'd go public if he didn't stop. My father's hands tightened into fists. He didn't stop, so I bought him out, forced him out, really, used every legal trick in the book. It destroyed him financially. He lost everything. The camera angle shifted slightly, like my father had adjusted it. Marcus blamed me for his divorce, his bankruptcy, his daughter's death. She died in a car accident 3 years later, and somehow, in his mind, that was my fault too. He became unstable, obsessed. He started following me, sent letters, made threats, and then he found out about you. My throat felt tight. I reached for my coffee mug. It was empty. He sent me photographs, David, pictures of you at school, your mother at work. He knew where you lived, where you went, and he told me if I ever tried to be part of your life, he'd make sure you both paid for what I'd done to him. The video had been recorded in daylight, but my apartment was dark. The laptop screen was the only light, casting my father's face in harsh blue. I hired security, had him followed, but Marcus was smart, patient. I couldn't risk it, couldn't risk your mother, couldn't risk you. So I stayed away. Changed your last name on the birth certificate from Miller to Carter, your mother's maiden name, paid her child support through an anonymous trust, and I watched from a distance. Watched from a distance, like I was a science experiment, like my childhood was something he could observe without participating in. When you turned 18, Marcus died, heart attack. Finally, I thought, finally, I can reach out. But by then, he paused, and his voice went quiet. By then, you hated me, and I deserved it. So I did the only thing I could think of. I got you a job at Miller Industries. My blood went cold. I made sure your application went through, made sure you were hired. I thought, maybe if I could see you, even from a distance, maybe that would be enough. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. And now I was supposed to what? Forgive him? Understand? Would you trust the word of a dead man? Or would you wonder what other lies he told himself to sleep at night? The video wasn't finished, but I couldn't watch more. Not yet. Dawn was breaking through my apartment window, gray light filtering through cheap blinds. I had to be at work in 2 hours. Work. Miller Industries. The place where I'd thought I'd earned my position through hard work and punctuality. Turns out I'd been a charity case all along. A guilt project. The boss's secret son, hidden in plain sight. I called in sick. First time in 3 years. Henderson sounded annoyed, but didn't push. Probably thought I had the flu. If only it were that simple. If only I could take some medicine and make this fever of rage and confusion go away. Emma. I needed to see Emma. Janine answered on the third ring. It's 6:30 in the morning, David. I know, I'm sorry. Can I take Emma today instead? I know it's not my day, but... Are you okay? You sound weird. I wasn't okay. Wouldn't be okay for a long time. But I said, I'm fine. Just want to see her. There was a long pause. Janine and I had been divorced for 2 years, but she still knew my voice, still could tell when something was wrong. David, what's going on? Nothing. Please, Janine, can I see her? Another pause. Then, fine. Pick her up at 9, but she has soccer at 3, so don't be late. Emma answered the door in her pajamas, hair wild from sleep, holding her stuffed rabbit. Daddy! She threw herself at me, and I caught her, held her tight. Too tight, probably. She squirmed. You're squishing me! Sorry, Bug. I set her down. She was getting so big. 7 years old. In another 7 years, she'd be 14. Would I still be around? Or would I do what my father did? Disappear behind excuses and justified absences? We went to IHOP. She ordered chocolate chip pancakes and got syrup all over her face. I couldn't eat. Just watched her, memorizing everything. The way she swung her legs under the booth, the gap where her front tooth used to be, the birthmark on her left hand, shaped like a lopsided heart. Daddy, why are you being weird? I'm not being weird. Yes, you are. You're staring. Kids are too perceptive. I'd forgotten that. I'm just happy to see you, that's all. She frowned, suspicious, then grabbed her orange juice. Mom said you sounded sad on the phone. Did she? Are you sad? Was I? Sad felt too small for what I was feeling. Betrayed, angry, confused, relieved, maybe, in some twisted way. At least now I knew. At least the not knowing was over. A little, I admitted. Why? Because my father, who I thought abandoned me out of cruelty, actually abandoned me out of fear. Because the life I thought I'd built was built on his foundation. Because I don't know who I am anymore. Grown-up stuff, I said. She rolled her eyes. That's what adults always say when they don't want to explain. 3 days later, I sat in a conference room on the 20th floor of Miller Industries, wearing a suit I'd bought that morning at Men's Warehouse. It didn't fit right. The shoulders were too tight, the sleeves too long. I felt like a kid playing dress-up in his father's closet. Except I wasn't a kid anymore, and, according to the legal documents in front of me, I owned 51% of this company, controlling interest. The board had to answer to me now. The board. 8 people in expensive suits who'd spent decades running Miller Industries. They sat around a mahogany table that probably cost more than my truck, staring at me like I was an alien who'd crashed their meeting, which, in a way, I was. Gentlemen, Miss Patterson, the lawyer, his name was Gerald Finch, and he had the personality of damp cardboard, gestured to me. This is David Carter, Richard Miller's son. Per Mr. Miller's will, David now holds majority ownership and assumes the position of chairman of the board. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then a man at the far end of the table, silver hair, navy suit, expression like he'd just bitten into something rotten, spoke. With all due respect, Mr. Finch, this is absurd. David Carter is a factory worker. He has no business experience, no education in management, He has controlling interest, Mr. Harrison. Finch's voice was flat. That's all that matters legally. Harrison's face went red. Richard must have been out of his mind when he made this decision. Maybe he was. Or maybe this was his final punishment, forcing me into a world I didn't understand, making me choose between the life I knew and the life he wanted me to have. A woman to my left, Miss Patterson, I assumed, the only woman at the table, cleared her throat. Mr. Carter, did you know about your relationship to Mr. Miller before he died? No, ma'am. And have you reviewed the company's current financial status, our projects, our obligations? I hadn't looked at anything except that damn video, which I still hadn't finished watching. Not yet. Another board member, younger, thin-framed glasses, leaned forward. Then perhaps we should appoint an interim chairman until Mr. Carter has had time to... No, the word came out harder than I intended. Everyone turned to look at me. I'm the chairman. That's what the will says. Harrison laughed, actually laughed. You have no idea what you're doing. He was right. But I'd spent 10 years being invisible in this building, being the guy who fixed machines while men like Harrison made decisions that affected my paycheck, my benefits, my future. And now they wanted me to step aside, let them keep running things while I collect a check and stay out of the way? Then teach me, I said. You've got the experience, I've got the authority. Seems like we need each other. Harrison started to respond, but Miss Patterson cut him off. That's a fair proposal. She looked at me, and I saw something in her expression. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. Welcome to the board, Mr. Carter. If power fell into your lap tomorrow, would you take it, or would you walk away from everything your father built? That night, I finally finished watching the video. My father's face filled the screen again, older and grayer than I remembered from earlier. He looked exhausted, like confession was draining what little life he had left. David, there's something else, something I've kept hidden for 30 years, and it's the real reason I'm leaving everything to you. He paused, gathering courage. Miller Industries isn't clean. It never has been. And I'm not talking about Marcus Dalton. I'm talking about what came after. My stomach dropped. When I forced Marcus out, the company was struggling. We'd lost contracts, investors were pulling out, and I was drowning in debt. I had a choice, let the company fail and lose everything, or make a deal. His hands trembled slightly. I made the deal. A deal? That word hung in the air like smoke. There's a group, I won't name them on this recording, but you'll find documentation in the safe at my house. Combination is your birthday, the full date. They're investors, but not the legitimate kind. They've been funding Miller Industries for 28 years, taking their cut, influencing decisions. And if you try to cut them out, he trailed off. They don't take kindly to that. Criminal investors. My father had been in bed with criminals. I've been trying to separate the company from them for years, quietly, slowly, but it's like pulling nails out of a wall. Every time I remove one, 2 more appear. They've got connections in every department. They know everything. He leaned closer to the camera. David, you have a choice now. You can keep the company, keep taking their money, keep the lie going. Hundreds of families depend on Miller Industries for their livelihoods. If you expose this, the company collapses. Lawsuits, investigations, bankruptcy. Everyone loses their jobs. I thought of Henderson, Marcus at the security desk, the guys I'd worked with for a decade, all of them with families, mortgages, kids in college. Or, my father continued, you can try to do what I couldn't, sever the connection, clean up the company. But that's dangerous, David. These people don't forgive. They don't negotiate. If you fight them, you risk everything, including Emma. Emma, her name in his mouth made my blood run cold. He'd known about her. Of course he had. He'd been watching. I'm sorry to leave this choice to you. I'm sorry for all of it. But you're strong in ways I never was. You grew up without privilege, without protection. You know how to survive. Maybe that's what this company needs. His eyes were wet. I love you, David. I always have, even from a distance, even when I had no right to. I hope someday you'll understand. The video ended. I sat in darkness, my father's words echoing. A choice. He'd left me a choice dressed up as inheritance. And whatever I decided would destroy someone, either the people working for Miller Industries or the criminals hiding inside it. I couldn't do this alone. Couldn't clean up a company infiltrated by criminals without help. But who could I trust? The board? Half of them probably knew about the deal, maybe all of them. I called Miss Patterson. Catherine, she insisted I call her. She'd been with Miller Industries for 12 years, started as a junior accountant, worked her way up to CFO. If you're serious about understanding the company, she'd said after the board meeting, start with the numbers. We met at a diner, 3 blocks from the factory, neutral ground. She ordered coffee, I ordered coffee. Neither of us drank it. "What do you know about the company's investors?" I asked. She studied me carefully. "That's a loaded question." "I'm the chairman. I should know who's funding us." "Should know, yes, but there are things your father kept compartmentalized, protected. He didn't want certain information spreading." "Why not?" Catherine's expression shifted. She was calculating something, deciding how much to tell me. "Because some of our funding comes from sources that wouldn't survive scrutiny." There it was. She knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. "My father left me a video," I said. "Told me about a deal he made. Said there were investors who weren't legitimate." She went very still. "He told you that?" "Right before he died. Left me documentation too. Names, transactions, everything." Catherine's face went pale. "David, if what you're saying is true, you need to be very careful who you share this with." "I'm sharing it with you." "Why?" "Because you're the CFO. You see the money. You know where it goes. And because," I hesitated, "because in that boardroom, you were the only one who didn't treat me like garbage." She almost smiled. Almost. "Careful, that's not much of a qualification for trust. It's all I've got." We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, rain started falling, pattering against the diner windows. Catherine finally spoke. "Your father tried to cut ties with them 3 years ago, quietly. Started redirecting funds, restructuring contracts, creating distance. They noticed." "What happened?" "There was an accident, a warehouse fire. No one died, but it destroyed 6 months of inventory. Cost the company millions. Your father got the message." My jaw clenched. They burned down their own investment? They burned down his courage. After that, he stopped trying. She looked at me directly. "If you're thinking about finishing what he started, you need to know what you're up against. These aren't businessmen. They're criminals who happen to invest in a legitimate company. There's a difference." "I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like a factory worker who just inherited a nightmare. No offense." "None taken." I leaned forward. "Help me, Catherine. Help me understand the finances, follow the money, figure out who's who. I can't do this without someone who knows the system." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "If I help you and they find out, I'm finished. Career over, maybe worse." "I know. And if we succeed, if we actually manage to cut them out, the company might not survive the separation. We could lose everything." "I know that too." She studied my face, looking for something. Resolve, maybe, or recklessness. Finally, she said, "Your father was a coward, but he was right about one thing. You did grow up different, harder." She pulled a flash drive from her purse. Financial records, offshore accounts, transactions flagged as suspicious. "I've been keeping copies for 2 years, just in case." Just in case. She'd been preparing for this moment. We spent 2 weeks analyzing the files. Catherine walked me through shell corporations, offshore accounts, transactions buried under layers of paperwork. The deeper we dug, the worse it got. Miller Industries wasn't just taking money from criminals. The company was being used to launder it. Construction contracts that didn't exist, consulting fees for ghost employees, purchase orders for materials that never arrived. My father had known, had to have known, and he'd let it continue because the alternative was losing everything. "There's a pattern," Catherine said one night, spreading documents across her dining room table. We'd moved our meetings to her house, safer than the office, she said, less chance of being overheard. "Every 3 months, a large payment comes through from Dalton Enterprises." "Dalton? Like Marcus Dalton?" "His son, Marcus Jr. He took over his father's remaining assets after the bankruptcy, rebuilt them into a legitimate investment firm. On paper, anyway." "Marcus Dalton's son. The threat my father had run from was still there, just wearing a different face. We need to confront him," I said. Catherine looked at me like I'd suggested jumping off a bridge. "That's a terrible idea." "He's the key, isn't he? Cut him out and the rest might crumble. Or he'll burn down another warehouse, or worse." But I was done being cautious, done letting fear make my decisions. I called Marcus Jr.'s office the next morning, told his assistant I wanted a meeting, private, urgent. She tried to put me off, but I played the chairman card.
Tell him David Carter wants to discuss his father's relationship with Richard Miller. Tell him I have questions about our current arrangement." The meeting was scheduled for 2 days later. Marcus Jr.'s office was in downtown Manhattan, top floor of a steel and glass tower. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, expensive suit, perfectly styled hair. He smiled when I walked in, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Carter, I was wondering when you'd reach out." "You knew who I was." "Of course. My father made it his business to know everything about Richard Miller, including his bastard son." The word hit like a slap. He gestured to a chair. "Sit. Let's talk, like civilized people." I didn't sit. "I want you out of Miller Industries." His smile widened. "Direct, I appreciate that. But you don't understand how this works." "Then explain it." "Your father made a deal that saved his company and made him a fortune. We've honored that deal for 3 decades. Honored it when he tried to back out, honored it when he died and left everything to you. And now you walk in here after 2 weeks of playing detective with Catherine Patterson, yes, I know about that, and demand we walk away?" He laughed. "That's not how business works, David." My hands clenched into fists. "This isn't business. It's extortion. Call it what you want. The result is the same. Miller Industries survives because we allow it to survive. You live in comfort because we allow it. Your daughter, Emma, right? 7 years old, loves soccer. She has a future because we allow it." Mentioning Emma crossed a line. I stepped forward. "You threaten my daughter again and what?" He stood, meeting my eyes. "You'll call the police? With what evidence? Everything we do is legal on paper. Every transaction documented, every contract signed. You can't touch us without destroying yourself." He was right, and he knew it.
"But here's what I'll offer," Marcus continued. "Keep taking our money, keep your mouth shut, and in return, we'll keep Miller Industries running smoothly. Everyone wins. Except my soul. Souls are overrated." He walked to the window, looking out over the city. "Your father learned that. Eventually, you will too." I left without another word. Catherine was waiting in the car downstairs. One look at my face told her everything. "He won't budge," she said. "No. So what now?" "What now? Good question. I could walk away, sell the company, take the money, disappear. Emma would have everything she needed. I could go back to being nobody. Or I could fight, risk everything, including her. Now, I said, we go to war." Going to war sounded brave in the moment, but war has casualties, and I wasn't the only one in the line of fire. The threats started small. A brick through Catherine's window, slashed tires on my truck. Henderson pulled me aside at the factory, nervous, sweating. "Someone's been asking questions about you, Carter. Guy in an expensive suit. Said he was doing background checks for the board, but I don't know, something felt off." They were circling, letting me know they were watching. Then Emma's school called. She'd been picked up early by a man claiming to be her uncle, Janine's brother. Except Janine's brother lived in California and hadn't visited in 3 years. I broke every traffic law getting to Janine's house. She met me at the door, Emma safe behind her. "She's fine. They brought her back 20 minutes later. Said it was a mistake. Wrong Emily Carter." "There is no other Emily Carter at school." Janine's face went white. "David, what the hell is going on?" I couldn't tell her. Couldn't explain that my inheritance came with strings attached to criminal organizations, that my fight for control was putting our daughter in danger. So I lied. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." That night, Catherine called. "We need to stop. This is getting too dangerous." "We're close." "Close to what? Getting ourselves killed?" "They took your daughter from school, David. They walked into an elementary school and took her. What's next?" She was right. I'd been playing chess with people who didn't follow rules, who'd burned down the board before letting me win, and Emma was becoming a piece in their game. I thought about my father's video, his choice to stay away, to watch from a distance, to let fear dictate his life. I'd hated him for that, called him a coward, but now I understood. When you love someone, their safety matters more than truth, more than justice, more than your own pride. Maybe he wasn't a coward after all. Maybe he was just a father. I met with Marcus Jr. again. This time, I came with different terms.
I'll stop investigating. Keep the arrangement as is, but I want guarantees." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "I'm listening." "My daughter is off limits, completely. No surveillance, no threats, no mistakes at her school. Catherine Patterson, too. She walks away from this, no retaliation. And the workers at Miller Industries, their jobs are protected. No more warehouse fires, no accidents. In exchange for, I stay chairman, keep my mouth shut, let the money flow. Become what my father was, a front man for your operation." The words tasted like ash. Marcus studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Deal. See, you're learning. Business is about compromise, not idealism." I left his office feeling hollowed out. That night, I sat in my apartment, the USB drive still on my coffee table where I'd left it weeks ago. My father's face frozen on the paused screen, mid-sentence, forever trying to explain. I finally understood him, the weight of impossible choices, the way love can make you complicit in things you'd never forgive yourself for. He'd stayed away to keep me safe, and I was doing the same thing, surrendering to keep Emma safe. But there was a difference. He'd carried this alone. I didn't have to. I called Catherine. I made a deal with Marcus. Silence on the other end. Then, what kind of deal? The kind where we stop fighting, where everyone stays safe. "David," I know, but I can't risk Emma. I can't become my father by making the same mistakes he did, but I also can't become him by letting pride destroy everyone I love. Another long silence. So, what now? Now I learn to live with it, run the company, provide for my daughter, accept that some battles can't be won. Catherine's voice was quiet. Your father would be proud and heartbroken. She was right on both counts. 6 months later, I sat in the chairman's office, my office now, looking out over the city. The factory floor was 20 stories below, invisible from here. That distance felt like a metaphor for everything that had changed. I'd learned to wear suits that fit, learned to read quarterly reports and negotiate contracts, learned to sit in rooms with criminals and smile like we were all just businessmen making deals. The board had stopped questioning my authority. Harrison even showed me grudging respect. I'd become what they expected, Richard Miller's son, finally grown into his inheritance. But some nights, I still dreamed I was back on the factory floor, hands covered in grease, invisible and honest. Emma was doing well. She didn't remember the man who'd picked her up from school that day. Kids forget trauma easier than adults. Janine had stopped asking questions, satisfied with the child support checks that were suddenly more generous. Catherine had moved to a different division, kept her distance. Smart woman, she knew when to walk away. The USB drive sat in my desk drawer. I hadn't watched the video again. Didn't need to. I'd memorized every word, every pause, every moment my father's voice cracked with regret. I understood him now, completely. The deals he'd made, the compromises, the way he'd let fear shape his choices. We were the same, he and I. Two men who'd sold their souls in different currencies. His for ambition, mine for protection. But there was one thing I could do that he couldn't. One way to break the cycle. I pulled out my phone and called Janine. "Hey, is Emma around?" "She's doing homework. Why?" "Can you put her on?" A pause. Then Emma's voice, bright and clear. "Hi, Daddy." "Hey, Bug. Listen, I want to start having dinner with you. Every week. No excuses, no missed calls. Just us." "Really?" "Really. And I want to tell you stories about your grandfather. The real stories, not the sanitized ones." Janine came back on the line. "David, are you okay?" "I'm figuring it out." I looked at my father's portrait on the wall. I'd moved it from the lobby to my office. I'm trying to be better than I was, better than he was. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and started typing. An email to Catherine. "I need your help with something. Not investigation, documentation. I want a record of everything, every transaction, every compromise, every deal. Not to expose it, just to remember. So someday, when someone's ready to fight, they'll have the ammunition. Maybe that someone would be Emma, 20 years from now. Maybe it would be someone else. But I wouldn't let this secret die with me like it almost died with my father. The email sat in my drafts folder. I'd send it tomorrow, or the next day, or maybe never. Some choices take time. I walked to the window and looked down at the factory floor, 20 stories below. Somewhere down there, a man in coveralls was probably fixing a machine, dreaming of something bigger, not knowing the CEO watching from above understood exactly what that dream felt like. My father had watched me like this, from a distance, helpless and complicit. Now I watched the world he'd left me, trying to figure out if inheritance was a gift or a curse. Maybe it was both. The city lights flickered on as evening fell. I thought about Emma, about the macaroni art on my refrigerator, about the way she called me her hero, even though I wasn't. Not really. Heroes don't make deals with criminals. Heroes don't compromise their values for safety. But fathers do. Fathers make impossible choices and live with the weight. My phone buzzed, a text from Emma. "Love you, Daddy. See you next week." I typed back, "Love you too, Bug. Always." Always. That was the promise my father couldn't keep, the one I was determined to. Even if it meant carrying his sins, his secrets, his compromised empire on my shoulders. The portrait watched me from the wall, my father's face, my face, staring out with those hard eyes and that thin smile. We looked so similar. I wondered if someday Emma would sit in this office, looking at my portrait, trying to understand the choices I'd made. I hoped she'd understand, hoped she'd forgive, hoped she'd know that every compromise was for her, every deal a brick in the wall between her and danger. But hoping isn't the same as knowing, and forgiveness isn't the same as absolution. I turned off the lights and headed home. Tomorrow, I'd wake up, put on my expensive suit, and play the role of chairman. I'd attend meetings, sign documents, shake hands with men whose money was soaked in blood. I'd smile and nod and pretend this was normal. But tonight, I was just David Carter, factory worker, father, son of a man who tried and failed to be better. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. This is the end of my story. Or maybe it's just the beginning. The truth is, I don't know how this ends. Don't know if I'll find a way out of the deal I made, or if I'll spend the rest of my life maintaining my father's compromises. But I know this. Every day I choose Emma. Every day I choose to be present, even when being absent would be easier. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever had to choose between what's right and who you love, hit that like button. Drop a comment below telling me, would you have fought or would you have surrendered? And subscribe to this channel because there are more stories like this. Stories about ordinary people facing impossible choices. Stories that remind us we're all just trying to do our best with the cards we're dealt. I'm David Carter, and I'm still figuring out who that means. Thank you for listening.